My guest today is Yorke. Jay has built a dynamic career at the intersection of leadership, social impact, and community building. Born and raised in London, Jay started her career out there working in corporate partnerships for the Prince's Trust and Challenges. And it was there that she honed her skills in really building impactful collaborations with the likes of Starbucks and HSBC. And in 2015, she co-founded Oikos, a community platform that developed community apps for schools, churches, and political parties, supporting them in strengthening their internal and external connections. Now, living in Singapore, Jay has continued to expand her influence on a global scale. She co-founded leaders.org, an exclusive community designed to help influential leaders cultivate weak ties in a safe and inviting environment. And balancing her professional achievements with her personal life, she is a devoted mother to two young children and passionately advocates for the integration of people, advocacy, and the belief that leadership really begins at home. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Darshi. I'm really excited to be here and love the title of your podcast as well. So excited.
Thanks, Jay.
Thank
Me
you.
too. Where there is so many intersections, I have to start with Jay, join the dots for us. I really want to know what motivates you and what has driven you on this path across continents, across sectors, and with this ability to integrate various aspects of both your passion and your life into the work that you do.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. I think I love that you've started with intersections because that's something which I don't think gets enough airtime. I think we grow up thinking that we need to have one circle and one interest, and that's our circle. So, okay, finance, economics, or health, we have to be one circle. And I love that you use the word intersections. And I feel like I have many intersections. Particularly I started my first circle in the nonprofit world. That's one of my key areas of interest is the third sector, the nonprofit world, and community impact. And then it moved into entrepreneurship is another circle, and women's leadership and business and starting companies and startups. So that's another circle of interest. And then I became pregnant and had two kids, and then that became another area of another circle for me, parenting, how to be the best parent possible, because that was my full-time job for a couple of years. That became my next circle. And my degree was applied social science, social politics, and I always thought I will end up in politics someday, one day. I've always been interested in representing the voices of the voiceless, representing people who can't necessarily speak up for themselves, and just representing underdogs in particular. So yeah, it's really interesting that you use the word intersections, and I feel like all of us have very unique gifts, and I'm really trying to hone in on where my intersections are and try and bring the cross section of all of these circles together. So that's what I'm figuring out and still working on, and passionately believe that leadership starts at home, and which is something which I'm happy to talk about more about.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested because you're right. I'm sort of taking each of the elements of what you've done to date and what you've achieved to date. They're each this sort of strand in and of themselves. And actually, I see so many, and I meet many really successful people, and you kind of say, so what's the story and how did you get here? And often and I'm surprised actually at how often it can be, oh, well, I just sort of found myself here, and I just kind of started on this path, and then this job led to another, and someone not tapped me on the shoulder. Hearing you sort of play that back and hearing you actually talk, but we've talked about the intersection, but also how you've integrated, your personal life or things that have happened to you outside of work with how you're going to use that both at home and outside, where again, there can be this tendency for people to say, right, I'm going to, particularly women who then become mothers will be on a career path, and then they have kids, and then they want to be all in, but your mind is kind of in a lot of different places at once at how you kind of keep everything going. So I guess my underlying question to explore there is, how conscious a decision is it for you at each stage and at each juncture of your life to sort of curate the path for yourself?
I mean, I feel like it is a bit of also a privilege, and like with the title of your podcast as well. I don't want to, go off without saying that having the opportunity to think through these things, having the opportunity to think, where am I headed? What do I want to do? How do I get there? Who's going to help me get there? Having these moments to be able to think like that is a privilege. Not everybody has the chance to do that. But yeah, I did have the opportunities to do that. When I first graduated, I actually used to be in a headhunter, recruiting, sales, and all of that. Even though I wanted to actually do an internship in Westminster in Parliament, but I didn't end up doing that because I wanted to earn cash quickly.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
I wanted to earn some money. And then I was found out that I enjoyed sales. I was good at sales, but it wasn't sitting right with me. I felt this incongruence, and I felt I just felt it in my body that something wasn't quite fitting, and it was basically that I wasn't helping people. I wasn't making an impact. I wasn't improving society somehow. And that's how I ended up getting into, corporate partnerships, corporate fundraising, and working for now King Charles, his charity that helps underprivileged young people in the UK. I was able to use my sales skills for good, which I, did for, I've been doing for about 10 years. So that was definitely a conscious choice. It's like, how do I do what I'm good at, what I'm enjoying, but how do I make it, line up with what I'm passionate about as well? And then I had another moment like that a few years ago, quite recently actually, where I had this incongruence of like, what's going on, what's happening. I'd started Oikos, like you mentioned at the beginning, which was an app startup company. I started that with my husband. So co-founding a company with your spouse is another story, which we can go into, the pros and cons of that and how that all works. And I'm still doing that, which is good. But I had this moment where I was like, what is going on? What am I doing with my life? I just taken a few years out to look after the kids, and then I wanted to, go back into the company, start leaders and continue with leaders. But again, I felt something unsettling and incongruence. And my husband was about to get on a plane somewhere, and I was sharing this, and I wanted some support from him and some emotional feedback from him to be like, it's okay, don't worry. But instead he just handed me this book. I will show you the book. And then he got on his plane. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the book, Designing Your Life.
Designing Your Life, How to Build a Well-Lived, Joyful Life. Tell me more.
Yeah. So he just gave me this.
Yeah.
Which is by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And I read it in 1 week, which is the time that he was away. And then when I came back, I was like, amazing. It was a really, really good read for me. And I still use it today. And it basically uses design thinking principles to basically, so I think Bill Burnett used to work with Steve Jobs and in Apple. And so it uses that design thinking, from the industry to how do you think your way forward in your life? How do you prototype your life? And that really has hit home for me. and they come up with some mindsets. So how do you prototype your way forward? And I feel like this is something which we can do more of as a culture, as students grow up, particularly when they, you're told, okay, let's become a doctor or let's become a
Yeah.
lawyer.
Yeah.
How do you actually like try that out? How do you prototype your way forward?
Yeah.
So I'm definitely feel like I'm still on that, on that journey of prototyping my way forward, to be honest. Everything I do, people I speak to, it's gathering data, gathering information for, how do I prototype my way forward? And they have 5 mindsets.
Yeah.
So I can just share them if you're
Yeah, please
interested.
do.
So
It's on the
yeah. So the 5 mindsets, which I also now like try and embody and pass down to my kids, which I'll share more about as well, is trying stuff. So I think that one people do tend to find easier.
Mhm.
You just try stuff, Don't be scared of failing, or don't be embarrassed or whatever. Just go for it and try and see what happens. And then at least you can say you've tried. And this can be from, macro situations or micro situations. It can be for any type of, that's why it's a mindset. It's a way of how you do life now. So trying stuff and then reframing problems, which is, one which is sometimes challenging, but you have to remember it's like, okay, you're facing this problem, but how do you actually reframe that situation or reframe that problem and look at it from a different perspective. The other one is be curious, which I think comes easier to some people as well, is how do you be curious, ask questions, not, to your podcast title again, not hold biases, not assume things. How do you have that curiosity? And the other one is know it's a problem.
No, it's a problem.
Sorry, no, it's a process. No, it's a process. No, it's a process.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, it's a process.
Yeah.
There are problems. There's a lot of problems,
Yeah.
but no, that problem is just, it could be just a process. You're in it. You're right in it now. But there's a start, there's a middle, there's an end. So knowing that situation or that thing or whatever you're doing right now, it's a process, and you're in it. So just remembering that that's a process. And the last one, mindset, is asking for help.
Asking for help.
So don't necessarily do things alone all the time, or just if you have an idea or you want to try something, maybe just tell your friend, tell one person, or if you don't be afraid to ask for help, which is another one of my mindsets and my mantras. There's more people who are willing to help than there are people to ask, and there's actually research done on this, for the fact that people are out there having, very happy to help, but, they're not necessarily going to go around and offering things, and they don't know what to offer. They don't know how to help. That's not to say people won't help, but you can only ask, and don't be afraid of people saying no either. I've got a lot of no's in my time. That's okay.
Yeah, and I mean that I have to speak to that from my personal experience. I know when we first connected, that was something that you really caused a big mindset shift in me with, and you were just so open. It's like, what can I do, and how can I help? What do you need? Have you even told people about what it is you're looking for? When I was quite new to Singapore, and I know that we connected over that, and that's been a big thing for me. But now you've put it all into this framework from this curate your design your life. It's definitely it is going on my list, and it's so powerful. The concept of our lives being this design thinking mindset, or it being a process, because we also can very easily create this kind of stop start, right? The plan is this, I'm going to be this when I grow up, and I have to do everything for it. And then we wonder why we kind of start to unravel at some point. When you get there and realize, actually, I'm not sure if it was what I wanted. And trying stuff can feel, as we get more senior, as we get older, as we grow, as our responsibilities grow, it becomes quite a scary concept inside of what you could just try something, and if it doesn't work, then what happens?
I met I think it was a guy, like just somebody, a young student working in the hotel in Singapore, and I was just chatting to him, and I said, "Oh, is this what you want to do? Like, what do you want to do?" And then he was like, "Oh, no, I'm just here on the on the weekends." And I was like, "Okay, that's great. But what are you studying?" And he said, "Oh, studying this." And he said, "Oh, but my folks want me, my parents want me to be a police officer." And I said, "Oh, have you actually found out about how to be a police officer or what's involved with being a police officer?" And he's like, "No, no, I haven't, but I'm going to apply and I'm going to do it and I'm just going to sign up." And I'm like, "Oh,
Gosh.
maybe you can try talking to a friend who's a police officer first and see if you like it and find out about it." And then, he was like, "Yeah, that's a good idea." And then I started chatting to him more, and discovered actually his passion. He was a footballer,
Right.
but he'd actually injured himself.
Okay.
He was a very good footballer. That's what he really wanted to do. And then, just by chatting to him, I was like, there's other careers other than being a footballer in the football space, in the sports space, and you could talk to charities that help kids through football. And his mind
Nice. Yeah.
was interested, and it's giving that perspective that don't necessarily just jump into that job just because you've been told, well, yeah, you should be
Yeah.
that one profession. Like, go and talk to a friend in that profession, go and ask somebody, go and try it out, go and see if you can do a week in that job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
advice to young people right now, or anyone
I love it. And
starting something new.
yeah, that now your story all sort of makes sense to me. How it seemed to answer that very first question. It seems like it was a very conscious thing, and it is. It's something that you've been really aware of at each stage. Because that's the other thing we need to know is that we're going to have to keep reassessing it. Based on where you are in your life and what external factors are also at play as to how things are going to work. And working backwards, it makes me reflect on my childhood. And when you're at school, it is that, what are you going to be when you grow up? Go to the careers person, start, you apply to university when you don't even know what the working world looks like, let alone what you want to
Right.
do with it. And I suppose that brings me back around full circle to your passion as a parent and for this belief that leadership begins at home. How are you bringing these design principles then to your
Yep.
kids, and what sparked that?
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. I mean, yeah, before I had kids, we get taught how to be leaders. We get taught how to operate in the working world.
Yeah.
We get taught how to how to lead teams. But no one really teaches us, or trains us. We don't get the coaches or the trainers, to be parents. But there's a lot of low-hanging fruit from leadership training, that I found, and from all the leadership books, and how we manage our teams, how we think about leadership. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit there that can be applied to parenting, as you know. So when I read Designing Your Life and I read these 5 mindsets, I was like, wow, these are useful for mindsets for my kids to have and for me to influence my kids with. They're 6 and 3 right now.
Okay.
But I started this probably a year ago, is using the design thinking principles with my kids. And that's not getting a whiteboard and writing them down and saying, memorize these. No, it's more about when my daughter is getting frustrated with reading, or she's getting frustrated with her homework, or her project, or her drawing. Her drawing is not turning out perfect, and she's having that stressful moment. We've all seen it, right? Where they're really in that frustrated moment, and I mean, it's going to back to Carol Dweck's research as well.
Mindset, growth mindset.
Growth mindset. And
Yeah.
thank you. And helping them with that growth mindset. And for me, my daughter, is reminding her that it's a process, which is one of the mindsets, knowing it's a process. And I remind her that she learnt to ride a bike very quickly when she was young, and she fell over and she hurt herself, and then she took a while, and then she practiced, and then drawing that parallel to the drawing that she's doing now, or the reading that she's struggling with. and reminding her it's a process, and reminding myself in that moment that it's a process as well, helps. And then having, as a parent, having that mindset of helping kids to be curious, helping kids to try stuff, um, helping kids to ask for help, and reframe, the problem as well, which is a little bit trickier with young kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think these mindsets are important, to start them early, and that's how it all relates to me. How everything starts at home, you
Yeah.
know. Um, when I think about the type of leader I want my daughter to be, or the type of leader for her to be led by, um, it starts with, some of these principles, and giving her the opportunities to try stuff, and then also me having an example, being an example, me also trying to be
Yeah.
the leader I want her to be. And that's not easy to do. I feel like a lot of parents are pouring from empty cups.
Yeah.
A lot of parents are, just giving from empty cups, and it's not easy, particularly, when both parents are working, etc. So that also brings me to my passion on society, of how, from a tri-sector perspective, how can we as a society, businesses, the third sector, politicians, how can we come together to help in early childhood, and help parents in the workforce? Because I feel like, traditionally corporates and businesses have been set up in a way that's just for one working parent, but that needs to change now. But I'm going off on a bit of a
I mean,
tangent now.
this is
But,
that's a
yeah.
whole other episode in itself, Jay. Come back for
Yeah.
another for that. But so important, and really great to hear it in this context. As I said, we so often compartmentalize these things, but they are all connected, and we do need to think about how we're developing those leaders of tomorrow. Because I can speak from someone who works, in the inclusion space. We are, sometimes you are knocking your head against a brick wall to instill things in possibly leaders who didn't have maybe the parenting that that you're trying to affect now, and how sort of
Yeah.
how powerful that process will be to the world that we're leaving to that next generation. And I guess what
Yeah.
that takes me on to is leaders.org. Tell us a little bit about this, and and a bit more about these sort of so-called weak ties and how they can actually strengthen us. Since we're on this topic of intersection and connection and how everything is connected, like with all of your, all of your consciousness and the work that you're doing at home and advocating for that. I want to hear about leaders.org, and then I want to hear about, well, where are you seeing, or what do you see in all these leaders and really influential people in the region that you're meeting, and how hopeful are you for the future off the back of that?
Yeah, no, thanks, for asking that. I mean, I started Leaders, with my husband and Janikin, about two years ago now. We started it in Singapore. We actually started it during COVID, online, and we just invited people, interesting leaders, to join globally. We initially had 50,000 people just sign up, over the year, and we didn't actually do anything with those 50,000. And then after the COVID restrictions lifted, we were able to really meet people where they were, and that was in person, face to face. So really the goal of Leaders is, how do we efficiently connect busy leaders efficiently with people, ideas, and opportunities. Leaders are busy. They're juggling 101 things. They've got 101 things on their mind. But I believe that the importance of mixing and the importance of connecting and efficiently connecting with people who are different to you helps leaders become successful. So for me, leaders, and where I see it going, globally as well, because what we do is we host gatherings of 6 to 8 leaders in a private space, and we invite different leaders to join us every time, and they're leaders from different backgrounds, different industries, and the goal is how do you efficiently connect, with the leaders who may be different to yourself, who you may not have met. It gets hard in Singapore because Singapore's quite small, and there's usually one person in the room that's met somebody else. But yeah, I mean, usually it's how do you efficiently connect people with people who are different to you, that you haven't met before. And this is based off a theory of the sociologist, the professor Mark Granbetter from Stanford. He's an American sociologist, and he came up with a theory of the strength of weak ties in the 1970s, and it's based on the principle where you have your strong ties, you have your cliques, you have your friends, your families, your work colleagues, and you need those strong ties, for support, and daily you need strong ties, but those strong ties, they're one circle, they're the same circle. You're getting the same ideas from that circle, that clique, that friends. You're sharing the same information. So how do you get new information, new ideas, new opportunities? And it's through building bridges with acquaintances, with weak ties, which is, that's the theory of weak ties, is when you start to build and meet people who are from a different circle to you. Yeah. How do you meet somebody who's maybe unlike-minded to you? And he also did some research about job hunting, and he found that the 75% of senior execs, which you probably know, they get their jobs through their networks, through not necessarily their strong ties, but through an acquaintance, through the weak ties. So for me, leaders is important about mixing people. It's getting to know people, understanding them, understanding who they are, and then once you have that and read between the lines and learn who people are and what they're interested in, then you can connect them, and then you can connect people with ideas, with opportunities, with books, with theories, with it's not just about people, but how do you connect them to help them succeed. And so that's leaders, and the vision we have for that. We are limited by what Dunbar calls a Dunbar number, which is 150 people in our mind. So right now leaders relies on my husband and I. We do this as our passion project, and we lead it, and it's very in person, and we think about people in our heads. But how can we start to use what we call artificial workers to replace us? So to replace myself in getting to know the different leaders, getting to understand them, and then efficiently connect them with ideas, opportunities, and that's what we're going to be launching soon. So watch this space for an evolution of how leaders will evolve soon, using AI.
I love that you're
but we'll still be around in human form.
Yeah, and I love that you're taking me on dropping us a little exclusive along this journey of how your process.
Yes, it is an exclusive. It is an exclusive.
And
I hope I was allowed to share that.
Yes, moving into that AI space. That sounds like a series just right here, Jay. I think it's a really interesting space to be in when it comes to connections and using technology, but relying on the personal piece as well. And it also strikes me that that's the concept of weak ties in quite well with this idea that we should ask people for help, and people are willing to help. And you're actually creating a space where it's there, where you're giving those people that opportunities. And we've seen, and I know from that data perspective, we've seen how much of a boost it is for our individual sense of self, that if we are helping and feeling like we can help others. So I so appreciate you taking us on that journey. It's just my heaven, drawing all these connections together and seeing that evolution in and of itself. And it just strikes on so many of the themes of what this podcast is about. I'll put some links out so people can learn more about leaders. And I think I'm going to share some details on the Design Your Life book as well, because I think that would be super helpful for a lot of people. With my coach hat on, it speaks to a lot of the things that you cover off. And then when it comes to this podcast, I said it's called UNBiased, and you've touched on this factor that I think is really important, and that is being more curious and moving from that space of judgment sometimes to curiosity. And that for me necessarily means that we should have more questions than answers. And this is a process, and we don't know which answers might be revealed to us along the way. And so to wrap us up, Jay, I want you to leave us with a question for you that kind of remains on your mind. It might be one where, again, there's loads of experts that weigh in on it, but it's really not been answered yet. Is there a question like that you can leave us with today?
Yeah, it's a question that I'm probably prototyping my way forward to. I'm trying to figure out who can help me in answering this locally and globally. And it's, how might we improve social mobility through social mixing? And, so I'll say that again. How might we improve social mobility through social mixing? So how do we move, from one economic class to another economic class through mixing? So a lot of our initiatives, a lot of our policies today tend to rely on handouts, tend to rely on money, tend to rely on grants. And what we've seen over and over again, and also from the theory of weak ties, is actually when you mix different sectors of society together, when you mix different economic societies together, and the power of networks, the power of opening up your black book for somebody, or the power of learning about how they live their life, or how they do something, and learning about their life is really I can think can be impactful. I met a friend the other day, and she's trying to start an art business, and making some sort of ceramics or something. And she said most of her friends are in the catering business. She's a single parent. She's probably below the poverty line, and she has her circles is just one type of demographic, one type of person. And then we got chatting, and I said, I know people who are trying to get into this art business as well. And she was really pleasantly surprised. I was happy to help her and offer and introduce her to people. So I feel we haven't seen the end of that story yet, and I hope that then more connections can be made through mixing people from different demographics. That's why I also started Decades, which we haven't quite touched on, is learning from people who are from a different experience age to us as well. So how might we improve social mobility through social mixing it would be the question I would ask everyone to think about.
That's a big one for us. How can we improve social mobility through social mixing? Thanks, Jay. I feel like we'll be talking again on this podcast sometime soon, I hope.
Thanks for having me, Darji. Thanks so much. All right.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. I derive so much energy from speaking to such inspiring guests and having really meaningful and challenging conversations. If you felt the same way, my ask of you is to please subscribe to this podcast, either here or wherever you download your podcast content from. Unbiased is a labour of love for me, and the impact that these perspectives have depend on reaching as many eyes and ears as possible. So your support is invaluable. Until next time, stay curious.